Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. So today we are kind of turning the tables. It could be fun. It could be a total disaster. I'm not sure what to expect because today I am bringing a Detroit-based reporter into my podcast. His name is Sam Robinson. First, I want to talk to you about my partners at Preborn. According to a recent study, as many as 20% of women who undergo chemical abortions suffer complications and sometimes even death. And did you know that the Biden administration loosened restrictions by not requiring the NIH to report injuries caused by the abortion pill? And this pill accounts for over 60% of abortions. Preborn's network of clinics see many women who are seeking help after taking this pill, regretting their decision, and some of them are even coming in with their aborted babies' remains, not knowing what to do with them. It's so sad. But Preborn welcomes these women with open arms, and they offer them life-saving help, including the abortion pill reversal treatment if it's not too late. When you sponsor an ultrasound for a woman in crisis, you are empowering women with real choices. Please join us as we rescue women and babies. One ultrasound is only $28, and $140 helps to rescue 5 babies. You won't regret the choice to save a life. Please dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby, or visit preborn.com/Dixon. That's preborn.com/Dixon. Sponsored by Preborn. You know, Sam, I watch what you do on Twitter every day, or X, whatever we call it now. And I think you're one of the most genuine reporters out there that's constantly talking about what is good for your community, what your community needs. And you've just recently started your own site. I want to talk about all of that. But I have a lot of respect for what you do. And that's why you actually reached out to me and I was like, hey, how about you come on and I interview you? And I don't know what you thought about that, but I'm glad you said yes.
I said yes. I didn't even hesitate, did I? Really?
No, that's yes, true.
I talk to everyone. I appreciate you for bringing me on and being willing to, have this sort of long form discussion. You were willing to have it with us when you were a gubernatorial candidate back a couple of years back. I remember, covering you, asking questions. You weren't afraid to go where the tough questions were with Beth LeBlanc or Craig Mauger at the news. So, kudos to you. Everyone in the press corps seemed to, the consensus was, Tudor, she's a candidate. She's willing to take our hard and tough and sometimes repeat over and over and over again questions that, were people really, was this the issue that people cared about? I think when you talk about issues, whether it's in Benton Harbor, Kalamazoo, Flint, Midland, Saginaw, Detroit, Ann Arbor, they talk about kitchen table. They say that phrase for a reason.
Yeah, and actually, before we started recording, I was talking to you about your hometown right now is not represented by a state senator. The governor is supposed to call a special election, but she hasn't done that yet. And I said, how do you feel about that? And you were like, I don't think people there even realize. And that was such a good point, because when you talk about kitchen table issues, people hear that term and they're like, what does that actually mean? I mean, people in Michigan want to know about jobs. They want to know about the economy. They want to figure out what's going to happen to bring that money back into their own household. It's not about the bigger picture, I think.
No, I mean, I just think that even when you get down to the arguments in the legislature, a lot of the issues that we know that lawmakers know that they will need to pass once that deadline hits, they pass it. We haven't had a government shutdown in Michigan in some time. We'll see this year with this upcoming state budget. But it's really interesting. I think Matt Hall is a different kind of leader than we saw from Joe Tate a few months back. Detroit's Joe Tate. He's a state rep and the first ever Black House Speaker. A lot of Democrats are looking back at that and wishing that they had a different House Speaker.
But you say that, and I think, let me explain a little bit about why I think you're saying that. I think at the end of, not a lot happened. Not a lot of bills were passed during his time there. I think he faced a few challenges. He had a tie in the House for a while. So during his tenure, he didn't have exactly the opportunity that people might have thought he had. But then at the end, it was sort of everything kind of exploded. And there were these, it's 9 bills, right, that didn't go to the governor?
Yes, yeah, it was 9 bills that were supposed to be sent to the governor to be signed that just didn't somehow end up getting sent. Current court battles are playing out to see whether or not those are going to be signed and sent to the governor. But it's a really interesting thing that happened that Detroiters were watching along, where we had our Karen Whitsett, state representative. She covers the west side of the city, side with Matt Hall, really trash and disparage Joe Tate, who she hadn't had a reason to do that before this lame duck session. She was, going for her own sort of Detroit agenda.
I think that there is, it's interesting because I was watching this happening, obviously. And I think it's that same thing that you just were talking about. People are concerned about their own personal life situation, and they're like, I don't care about this. So she was kind of fighting on a few different fronts. I think water, and then wanting to lower the cost of water for Detroit for people in her district. And then also this restaurant bill. So in Michigan, this bill passed that the restaurants will have to pay minimum wage instead of the tipped wage. And then the tipped wage they think will go away. And there are a lot of restaurants that are very upset about this because it increases their cost, and their servers are sometimes getting less money. So we actually had a group of restaurants on our side of the state that brought in 5 legislators. And to your point of people being out of touch, they just I give them credit for sitting down with the restaurants. But the restaurant owners were begging them, please help us, please help us. And they were like, this is how it goes. It's, a battle because if we give this, they're going to want that. And these people are like, I don't care about your political games. What are you going to do for the people? And I feel like that's kind of where we've gotten away from it in the government, is realizing that everything that is passed in Lansing has a personal effect on someone's life. And they're not concerned with the games. They want to make sure they can feed their kids.
They're not. I mean, it's just political game after political gamesmanship we watch over there. And, guys, it really is either side of the aisle that you stand on. There's things that lawmakers are going to deliver to their communities, because if they didn't, they get voted right out because their communities are expecting them to do so. I really think that you saw this past election, a culmination of a few different things on the Democratic side, a few different things on the Republican side. I mean, I will never forget Tudor John James at Lorenzo Sewell's 180 Church talking about, Democrats are the party of inclusion, are the party of diversity and fairness. He pointed out, and it sounded like Minister Farrakhan or something, John James, right? Talking about your governor, white, your MEA director, white, your attorney general, your secretary of state, white. I really do think that Republicans sort of leaned in, and you saw it with I will vote for Trump. You saw all these different communities really get behind Republicans in a way that we haven't seen in some time. Was that because maybe they leaned in a little bit to that, diversity representation? On the other side, Democrats certainly leaned into the, we're going to keep the status quo. We're going to keep things how they are. And everything right now is great. Nothing is wrong. The inability to sort of address reality.
Well, I do think to a certain extent, there is that feeling that like the Democrats preach something, and then you have Joe Biden on the ticket and you think this is a lifelong politician who is a wealthy white man, who they seem to say that's not our jam, but it's the person they end up putting up. And then the representation in Michigan in areas that are traditionally minority areas haven't been minority representation. And so I do think that there has been kind of like well, hey, what's going on? Because Democrats have been in control. But that aside, I mean, I think that we do get caught up in these social issues of is there fairness? Is there a number of people here? Did they check all the boxes here? And then I think Trump has been an interesting. I mean, Trump is always interesting because he's not one to sit down and go, I've got to check the boxes and I've got to make everything right. He's like, I've got to achieve a goal. I think he has a very much a business mindset of achieving a goal. But in achieving that goal, he has put a lot of people in place that are very diverse and come from diverse backgrounds, but also, diverse ethnic groups. And I don't think he was trying to do that. I think it just came together that way. But the message, I think when you look at what's going on in 26, because 26 is going to be a different kind of race across the country in all of these different, I think we've got 36 gubernatorial races across the country in 26. In Michigan, we will have one. In Michigan right now, there's kind of this battle over, is Donald Trump doing the best thing for Michigan? And Democrats would say no, and Republicans would say yes. And then the automakers came out yesterday and met with him, and they said, well, we actually kind of like what Donald Trump is doing, and we see a future here. But I think people are very nervous about, what does it mean? We just saw, I think 660 people will be laid off in Dearborn because they're going to get rid of a factory there. What do you see from Southeast Michigan, those folks saying, what are their main concerns? A lot of them voted for Trump that weren't expected to. Do they like what he's doing? What do you think they want to see for the state?
Well, it's interesting. The UAW came out actually in support of tariffs, saying we need to blame corporations if, economic calamity ensues. I hear that from a lot of workers, construction workers. My neighbor, Tommy, who I play basketball with, he works for Wallbridge, actually, John Rakolta's company.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's sort of that style of economic populism where you're hearing people are really against subsidizing tax incentive. You talk about the SOAR program as a economic tool to bring large scale manufacturing projects here, like what's happening in Marshall, Goshen. A lot of people are wanting to see Michigan turn a page, right? Southeast Michigan has been reliant on the auto industry for the last, almost a century. Now, where are we going to go next? A lot of people are looking at Ann Arbor as a potential to be sort of the Silicon Valley of the Midwest. The tech incubators that are over there. You got all the VC and startup money that's going on, and they're looking at connecting the region. Really, you saw in Lansing communities that were opting out of smart transit millages are no longer able to do so. Governor Whitmer signed that law a few months back. That was a big priority for Wayne County Executive Warren Evans to try to convince the other communities that felt like in the past maybe they didn't need smart transit buses coming through, now realizing, hey, if we want to stay competitive, we need to put our young residents in Ann Arbor, in downtown Detroit, where the diversification of the economy is happening. That's what people are looking for. Different kinds of jobs, to answer your question, to give a long breath answer.
We've got more coming up with Sam Robinson, but first I want to tell you about my partners at IFCJ. After more than a year of war, terror, and pain in Israel, the need for security essentials and support for first responders is still critical. Even in times of ceasefire, you guys have to understand that Israel has to be prepared for the next attack, wherever it may come from, because they've got enemies on all sides. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews has supported and will continue to support the people of Israel with life-saving security essentials. But your gift can help that. You can help save lives by providing bomb shelters, armored security vehicles, ambulances, firefighting equipment, flak jackets, and bulletproof vests, and so much more. This is what your generous donation today will provide to the people of Israel and ensure the people of Israel are safe and secure in the days to come. Give a gift to bless Israel and her people today by visiting supportifcj.org. It's one word. It's easy to go to, supportifcj.org, or you can call. It's 888-488-IFCJ. That's 888-488-IFCJ. 888-488-4325. Now stay tuned. We've got more right after this. I had somebody yesterday say to me, I don't understand why we would put this semiconductor plant in a county that doesn't want the semiconductor plant. Why aren't we putting it in Detroit? And why aren't we putting it in Flint? Why don't we open up one of those old factories? And I was like, okay, from the perspective of someone who had a factory, let me explain to you. If I'm coming into the state of Michigan, first of all, the state of Michigan actually has laws that say once you buy a piece of property, it's not like you start new. You are responsible for everything that happened in the past there. That's an immediate deterrent if I'm a factory owner, because that's a massive amount of cost every year that I have to pay for the sins of the past. The state's not going to help. I'm taking this on. I own the sins of the past. So there's not going to be a whole lot of motivation for a company to come in and take that on, because the environmental cost is extreme. So you think about these regulations, how they affect our communities that really do need those businesses, but they're moving people out. And then you think, well, I could also build up a whole new community. Everything builds around my factory. I bring in a factory with high paying jobs, and we're talking about high paying hourly jobs. But then, it's a big deal when you have different levels of income as well, because you've got your sales force, then you've got your managers there, and then you've got your presidents, and you've got your managers of the factories, and everybody has a different level that they're bringing to the community. And then your restaurants build up and your schools build up and all those things build up around it. So you have to kind of look at the state of, okay, if we want to build up our communities that used to be thriving and aren't anymore, is there a way to cut some of that regulation so we're not punishing people for going into those communities? But then how do we convince communities who have historically been farming communities, but maybe they are struggling and they do need some different types of industry in there to diversify their industry? How do we convince them that change is not a horrible thing? And I think that's something that we've been lacking. And maybe that's something that even from the legislature, from the standpoint of, you talked about all of the back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. Well, if it's something that your side is inherently against, maybe you can't go to your community, or you can't see how you go to your community and talk through, this is actually a good thing. And I do think that the subsidies have been part of that problem. And maybe this is getting blown up now with DOGE, because you see the government at the federal level and on the news every night talking about, like, we the taxpayers don't want to pay for all this stuff. And SOAR hasn't been successful because it hasn't built the jobs. So I can see how Michigan can be a powerhouse, but there has to be some coming together.
Yeah, there does. I think there's plenty of that going on right now. Obviously, our mayor of Detroit is running for governor as an independent. His State of the City address was sort of a victory lap on Tuesday night, sort of a 10-year highlight reel of what he has accomplished over his tenure. Tudor, it's really interesting. I talked to Trump voters on the ground that tell me that they would vote for Duggan. I say, Eric Nesbitt, John James. They say, no, we want John James to stay in Congress. I do think he would have success in a Republican gubernatorial primary. But it's very interesting when you talk about the Democratic candidates who don't have sort of the 10-year decade run up of I saved Detroit is what the pitch is going to be, not saying he did, but saying what he is going to say about his campaign and himself. We heard it last night, and it's a compelling pitch. It is one that no other candidate running for governor is going to be able to make. You're going to see Democrats like Albus Farhat come out and say, I'm open to voting for Duggan. Certainly Karen Whitsett, who she's had a relationship with Duggan over the years. But I'm curious to know, what Republicans are kind of thinking, because when I ask people like Bill Schuette, he's my fellow Midlander, he tells me, no way, Sam, no way in hell are Republicans going to support a guy that was just stumping for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden a year previously.
Oh, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think there's a lot of people that go, well, wait a minute, you don't get to just leave your party because you think you can't beat Jocelyn Benson. If you think you can't beat Jocelyn Benson, then how do you bail on your own party? And I get the whole I'm rebranding because I don't like the progressive side of the party. And I do think that they are kind of a metaphor for the party, the Democrat Party in general right now. If you look at the race for the Michigan governor's race, why would Duggan step out from his party unless he thinks that he can't beat Jocelyn? And if he can't beat Jocelyn Benson, what is his argument going to be? Is it going to be that she is part of the progressive wing that people feel is out of touch with the average Democrat voter? So I think you're making a good point. He's going to come out and he's going to say, we've done all of this in Detroit, and hope that that registers with the rest of the state. I think that what you're hearing from Republicans is probably true. The rest of the areas that are Republican are not Detroit, And so are those people going to say, well, that was important enough to me to say I'm going to vote against what I know his value set is, because he has this record in Detroit. And if you are not fully connected to Detroit, if you're connected to Grand Rapids, if you're connected to Traverse City, if you're in the UP, then that may not be enough to say, I'm going to go with someone who I know historically was a Democrat, who did stump for Kamala Harris, who has not shown the values that I think are Republican. And so I think it's kind of interesting to watch what's happening in Michigan. This is the ultimate split of the Democrat Party. So when does it come back together? And how does he define Jocelyn Benson? How do you see him defining Jocelyn Benson in this race and saying he's better than her for some reason?
Authenticity. Jocelyn Benson struggles connecting with a mass, especially young Black audience. I don't think her campaign would argue with that, particularly when we see the response to Garland Gilchrist's campaign. We have not seen Jocelyn Benson. I mean, I haven't personally, so if you guys have done it, I apologize. Jocelyn Benson campaign, I haven't seen her stand in front of supporters yet. We've seen Chris Swanson do a big blowout
people.
event.
You're not allowed
we
in.
saw Garland Gilchrist in New Center here in Detroit do a big event, with a few hundred people. We have not seen Jocelyn Benson in front of, standing with, at an event with supporters. When she announced, you remember, I was actually the first one to report that her website went live and that she was in fact running for governor as expected. And the very next day, hours after my report is published, she goes to the Richard Austin building to officially file her candidate committee for governor and takes questions from reporters there. We haven't heard much, though, in fairness to all of these campaigns. Tudor, it is still a year and several months out. But that really hasn't stopped these campaigns. I mean, we're seeing Instagram stories from Jocelyn Benson, from Mike Duggan, from Chris Swanson, reacting on the various things happening in Lansing and DC every day. And so these campaigns are actively campaigning. How much money they're spending, too early, I think, to say yet, but it's going to be interesting to see once we get closer to 2026.
Do you think that the endless campaigning is getting annoying to people?
It is. I mean, it's not annoying to us reporters who get to just, constantly be in the campaign season. But it is. I think, the idea of getting out in front this early is just name recognition. Jocelyn, they joke that she has 83 campaign offices in each county. Mike Duggan obviously has all of Fox 2, Channel 4, the Metro Detroit. He's being blasted to 5.5 million people every day. And then Chris Swanson has his, when you drive to Lansing, at least from where I am, you see his billboards for his ghost operation. I don't know, it's like a sex trafficking operation that he is deployed, I suppose. I should know more about Chris Swanson's ghost program. But he's up there in Genesee County. So down here in Detroit, man, he's got some work to do in terms of catching up. And he's not shy about it. I've talked to him at length already. I'm still looking to get my 20 minutes, in person or on the phone with Jocelyn. Garland gave all the reporters 10 minutes over the phone a couple days before he launched. Yeah, so, I mean, they're still connecting with us. That was the big thing with Kamala Harris's campaign. The campaign themselves even said, guys, you have to talk to local media, and they just refused to do so.
So what do you think about the podcast circuit that Trump went on? Do you think that helped him? Because I do think there's a difference. I mean, you talked about me taking questions, but you get a minute to answer, and then they clip what they want and they put it out there.
Yes, they
Trump
do.
was different because he went on these long form podcasts, and I think he's also unique in that he can say things and still live through them. But
Yes, he can. He can because they clipped him. They asked him. I think it was Lex Friedman's podcast where he sort of admitted that the election wasn't stolen, but then sort of backtracked and said that it was. And so, the long form podcasts have the opportunity to get stuff that you wouldn't get. We just saw LeBron James do a hour long with Pat McAfee yesterday on ESPN. LeBron doesn't go on Stephen A. Smith. He's not going on Sports Center after every, so to get the president doing these, it was almost a little bit surreal at first, especially for the younger audiences. Like, we're watching podcasts every day. We're watching all these guys, the Theo Vaughns or whatever. He did Aiden Ross, like he stopped shy of Kai Cenat and I Show Speed, but the streamers, and it's like a whole new world we're going in. I think it wasn't so much of that he went on the podcast. It was his campaign's openness and just really willingness to go to spaces that they didn't have control of. And Kamala's Democrats en masse right now, if they do not have control of the media space, they don't go on it. And I
think that it is a very scary thing to go into a place where you have no control, because
yes,
anything can happen. And then, if you've run for office, that you are just, you're destroyed, right? You're the one thing you have is your reputation. And I think that anybody would tell you that your reputation is very important to you, no matter who you are, no matter what age you are. If your reputation is ruined, it's very demoralizing. But he was willing to go out there and say, what else can they do to me? He's kind of like that guy where it's like, I've been ruined in every sense of the word. I'm going to show them who I really am. Now I'm at the point where I can only show them who I am. And I think people who get to know him, a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people went, actually, I kind of like him. He seems sort of like a normal person. And if you get that opportunity to sit down with people and say, well, I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear what the worst thing is that's happening to you right now. How can I help you? You would learn whether or not the person actually wants to help you or whether or not the person just wants that position. And I do think there is a lot of that in politics. I want the title. I want the title. But you talk about controlled environments, and you said you haven't been able to talk to Jocelyn Benson. She has done events, but they've been closed. So what does that say?
I mean, it's a book out of the Whitmer playbook after the kidnapping, FBI entrapment, however you want to spin that story. Her office staff became much more sensitive to giving out where events would be, in fairness to her security and safety. But it would creep on and on and on. And, sometimes we'd be like, oh, you're inviting us to this thing at 6 a.m. and the thing is at 10:30 or 11 a.m. And it's like, the ABC news staff is over there in Saginaw and you got to drive all the way down to Lansing. So that kind of thing would happen. I just think that I think Democrats need to start talking to more people, honestly, and more openly.
But I don't know that it's just, I think that it seems like it's just Democrats because the commander-in-chief was very open. We just came off of that Trump campaign and he was very open. First, I want to tell you about my newest partners at GenuCell. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great story. It's heartwarming and refreshing, and it's true. This woman named Phyllis, she walked into a neighborhood pharmacy in Colonia, New Jersey, and she asked for the pharmacist to make her an antioxidant cream for her wrinkles, which I think we can all kind of understand. And the pharmacist said, well, I'll compound one for you and then come back and you can get it tomorrow. So Phyllis came back and she used it for 3 days. Then she goes to her dermatologist appointment and the doctor literally thought she got work done because she looked so good. So Phyllis went out and told everybody about the pharmacy and the pharmacist who made this magical cream. And then, believe it or not, that is how GenuCell skincare was born. That's 25 years ago, and now GenuCell has shipped millions of orders, and they still have the same philosophy about the antioxidants. They have the same natural base, and they have the same chef in the kitchen. They are celebrating 25 years. And I tell you, I use this product. I think it's amazing. And right now, Genucel is offering the best prices ever since Phyllis walked into George's Pharmacy all those years ago, because right now you can save 70% on Genucel's complete skincare package, featuring the Genucel under eye bags and puffiness serum. I'm using that. The dark spot corrector, also love that. And you get immediate effects for these. You get these results in minutes. You look 5, 10, even 15 years younger. And I'm not trying to brag, but honestly, I have seen changes in my face that amaze me. So these changes are guaranteed or your money back. That's the best part. So go to Genucel.com/Dixon today. That's Genucel.com/Dixon. And I can tell you, you're not going to regret it. We have seen where there's been all these town halls where Republicans have been attacked in the town halls. And so they've shied away from town halls. Now, I think a lot of these are also unfair because they've done it while Republicans are in session. And then they put the seat up and, he wouldn't come. Well, he's in Washington. He does have a job. So some of them are unfair. But I do think that people are uncomfortable in a situation where they don't know if they're going to be attacked and humiliated and put on the spot. And so I think that as politics have gone back to more of that, there was a time when it was you were only what the media said about you, and there wasn't somebody recording you around every corner. So these last 10 years have really changed because there's someone tracking you and there's someone trying to catch you on camera, and anything that you say that can be interpreted the wrong way, it can be deadly to you, but not just to your campaign. It's like forever. I order on the Starbucks app and I'm like, my name is on there. What are they going to think of me? I went into Qdoba yesterday and the guy was like, oh, I like your outfit. What do you do for a living? And I was like, oh, I'm a podcaster. And he said, what's the topic? Is there like a topic? And I said, it's politics. And he was like, oh, are you affiliated with like a party or just politics in general? And I said, I'm a Republican. And he went, oh. but he goes, you know what? I'll listen to it anyway. So write it down. I was like, okay, all right.
Hopefully he's listening. Shout out to Qdoba, but I like Chipotle a little bit better.
I know. We don't want to insult him. He's already struggling to come over to the Republican podcast side. But I said, I'll come back and see what you think of it. So I don't know. We'll see.
I've been listening to a lot of conservative podcasts. I've been listening to the people that they tell me not to listen to. I grew up liking Kanye's music, so I still kind of am the Russell Westbrook meme, eating the chips, listening to his new music as they tell me not to. It's really important. I think Gavin Newsom and Stephen A. Smith and all these left of center guys bringing on the conservatives, it's making for interesting conversations. I really think that we're all humans. Like, we're all Americans. We're all Michiganders. Shouldn't we have
We're not as far apart as people think
not
when
even,
you actually talk.
And a lot of times it's like you're really close together, actually. On issues that a majority of people are against. And now we go back to the conversations about economic development and subsidy and tax capture. Mike Duggan calls it a discount, which is a really good way to frame it so people will support, allow large companies and billionaires get discounts on the tax revenues generated off large projects and the buildings that they build. Tudor, I do wonder, though, as Democrats were arguing with me over tipped wage, you want to take the side of the worker, you want to take the side of, unpaid leave. What happens, if all these small businesses are no longer, they say, well, if the business can't afford to pay somebody a living wage, then that doesn't sound like a business to me. And I asked them, well, do you just want Amazon and Jeff Bezos land and Target? Because those are going to be the only people that are able to provide the 40-hour sick leave and these benefits. And so a lot of the issues really just horseshoe right back into the other. You saw Dylan Wegela and Steve Carra introduce legislation that I'm not sure what the status of the legislation is, but to ban lawmakers signing no discussion agreements when crafting legislation like SOAR.
Yeah, because then you don't, as the taxpayer, you don't, if they have a non-disclosure, then you don't know what your money is going to. But let me just, I know I'm a little over time, but I want to get to this because I want to ask your opinion. You have Duggan saying that these big corporations are getting discounts. That's a nice way of saying that they aren't paying taxes, which seems odd because all I keep hearing from Democrats is we're going to raise the corporate tax rate because you have to pay your fair share. But then the corporations that have lots of money are getting a tax break. Mom and pop who own the restaurant are getting screwed. I mean,
Duggan would say, don't group me in with those Democrats. I'm not a Democrat anymore. You got to ask them.
Well, but okay, regardless, it doesn't matter party because I agree. I think that these corporations have gotten tax breaks for a long time, but it hasn't worked in the state. If you look at it, our Main Street is dead. And then you've got these big corporate entities that are kind of like sucking off the teat of Michigan, and there's not going to be any more people to suck off of if every little small business can't survive anymore. And when we talk about, it's funny because the paid leave, I was like, what are the small businesses who aren't paying paid leave? And I was out at lunch one day and this woman said, I work for consumers. And another lady looked at her and she goes, oh, you must love it there. You get such great benefits. And she said, I'm only in my 4th year, so I don't get benefits. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, they don't hire you on as a full-time employee until your 5th year. So I'm a contractor. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're the person who doesn't get paid leave. You're the person that doesn't get insurance. This is no health and no benefits at all. And I was like, the people who are paying politicians here, you've got this big corporate entity who is not actually hiring people on. And it was like this moment where I thought, that is so upsetting to hear that this big corporation is skirting its responsibility of giving its employees the benefits that they deserve. And you've got mom and pop restaurant next door who's saying, hey, I have girls that work here on a Friday and Saturday night and they make $80 an hour and they don't have to work the rest of the week, and their husbands work and they can stay home with the kids during the week. And now they won't make $80 an hour because they're going to be at this capped wage. Unintended consequences. But when unintended consequences happen, then we have to come together, and we're so divided.
Yeah, I do think that in Michigan, we tend to come together more than we don't. And I am grateful for the folks that make that happen. It's interesting out here where we, go left, we go right. But at the end of the day, we're all just people in the world living. So
that's why I wanted to have you on, because I'm like, oh, he seems really genuine. Like, I think when you put stuff out, it's you.
I try to be honest, and that's the biggest thing is, the Detroit 1 million, we're talking about a generation of Michiganders growing up in a state without a city with 1 million people. If you look at a map of the United States, you'll see the cities, or the states rather, that have cities with 1 million people. The states that don't tells a story. Detroit is the only city in America, Tudor, to ever lose 1 million people. Doing it all from first person perspective, talking to you, competing with the free press and the news and Gongwer and Mers for Lansing News, City Council, Detroit Scoops, doing it in a way, Tudor, that's just, here I am. I'm Sam Robinson. First person, you're going to, hear my voice, hear the things that I think about when, people are talking. And I really think that's the future is being really honest about where you are doing news, being honest about your own biases.
So what is Detroit 1 million? Tell people what exactly it is.
It's my own website.com, Detroit 1 million. It's a journalism project that I started in December, really only because the Free for the News didn't want my Mary Sheffield went to a Trump party story. And I knew that was going to be a big thing in Detroit. Mary Sheffield is our city council president. She is running for mayor. Some would say she is the lead. She's the front runner to become the mayor this fall in Detroit to replace Duggan. She went to a holiday party that was Trump themed. The person that hosts the party every year is an annual holiday party put on by an event planner here in Metro Detroit. She decided to go to the party. I didn't have anywhere else to publish it, so I decided to go on Substack. Shout out to Substack, man. A lot of us laid off and sort of disaffected journalists are landing on Substack and realizing that they're taking care of us. It's been really fun. I appreciate everyone that has signed up so far. Truly, guys, like you're literally allowing for news and information to be distributed to you in a way that if you were not supporting it, it wouldn't exist. And so it's been a surreal feeling so far. And that's what I tell people. I say it's kind of like a Detroit version of Mercer Gongor, kind of an insidery thinking about young people. I'm always centering young people in the stories, and thinking about the future. So we're going to talk about AI and crypto and all of the things that people that are under 30 or even under 40, born after 1975 even, might be able to appreciate, because it's sort of this gerontocracy that we live in. The news is paid for by that gerontocracy, the people that are our senior,
even
elders.
Old people like me could find something there.
Tudor, you can find plenty at Detroit 1 million. It really is. I try to take an interesting look at these stories that are the biggest stories in Michigan politics.
So how do people, they sign up at the website and then that they can support you financially too, right?
They can. It's $8 a month. There's a founding member version where you can get, but $8 a month is all you need to get behind the paywall. Some of the stories, I do a weekly free read. It's a roundup of everything in the world, not just politics, but pop culture and sports as well. And taking a look at what's going on across Michigan, all over the state, not just Detroit, but really reframing Detroit as like the cultural center of the state, which I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I was there for my daughter's basketball or volleyball tournament a few weeks ago, and I was on the People Mover, and I was like, there is so much cool stuff that people don't know about. So I think that's what's critical, and that's really what draws me to you. So for anybody out there, I think that you would really enjoy it. Detroit 1 million, if you go there, because Sam is someone who is doing this because it's genuine. He loves the city. He loves getting the message out. He loves the state. And that's why I wanted to have you on. So I want to say thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much. All stripes too. It's a nonpartisan, we're not going to put my own political spin and bias on it, which we all know that all reporters have. We can stop pretending that reporters don't have personal, feelings on issues. They do. But that's not in there. Tudor, thank you so much for having me on your show here.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Remember, it's Sam Robinson and it's Detroit 1 million. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tudor.
And thank you all for listening to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. For this episode and others, go to TudorDixonPodcast.com, the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and join us next time. Have a blessed day.